Shocking truth, how 2 million people crossed the Red Sea at 3 a.m. The insane math uncovered. It was a night draped in shadows, thick with mystery, when 2 million people made a desperate dash across the Red Sea, one of the most infamous and outrageous moments in history. Time was ticking, and the clock struck 3, a witching hour when hopes flicker like dying embers. The sea that usually churned and roared seemed eerily still, as if it held its breath, ready to unleash fury in an epic showdown. Each heartbeat pounded like a drum, igniting tension in the cool night air. The water parted like curtains drawn back on a grand stage, revealing a narrow path slick with danger. Their every step echoed the gravity of their journey, desperation spilling from their eyes, fear lacing the air. But the weirdest part? The sheer numbers. How on earth could 2 million souls cross in the dead of night? The mind races. Think of it, marching shoulder to shoulder, families clinging to one another, babies wailing, the elderly trembling. Just imagine the sight, columns of frantic humanity silhouetted against the moonlight, as if the stars had decided to descend to witness this chaos. But wait. Imagine the whispers racing through the crowd. What if the waters closed in? What if we're not the chosen ones? Panic rippled like an electrical charge, igniting a wave of uncertainty. And right there, the tiniest crack of doubt began to form. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As they pressed forward, the ground beneath felt like quicksand. It was unstable, surreal. Each footfall was a gamble, the water could swallow them whole at any second. Hope surged alongside fear, but doubt lingered. Their shouts leveled off, replaced by prayerful murmurs, intense, desperate. With each passing second, a deeper mystery loomed. As the walls of water loomed high, who was really guiding them? Was it faith, or something far more sinister? The air crackled with tension, leaving everyone on edge. Just then, a chilling cry sliced through the air, freezing everyone in their tracks. What had they uncovered? What awaited them on the other side? Was freedom really within reach, or was danger creeping ever closer? The night held its secrets tight, leaving hearts racing and minds spinning. What lay ahead? A deafening silence fell over the throng of desperate souls, their fearful gazes darting around for answers. What had caused that chilling scream? Was it a warning or something else entirely? Nobody dared break the stillness that enveloped them, their breaths hitching, an unspoken understanding shared between them. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, another scream erupted, this time closer. People flinched and turned to find a woman, distraught and wild-eyed, collapsing to her knees. The water, it's not just parting, she wailed. It's alive. The words echoing through the crowd sent shivers racing down spines. What do you mean alive? A man shouted from the throng, his voice tinged with disbelief. The sea doesn't come to life. But behind him, fear was spreading like wildfire. As if responding to her madness, the waters surged slightly. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it sparked a wave of panic nonetheless. We'll drown. We'll be swallowed whole. Someone cried. The crowd began to shift, bodies pressing tighter together, and murmurs escalated into chaotic shouts of terror. Just then, glistening tendrils of water rippled as if alive, flickering with a strange, bioluminescent glow, freakishly beautiful yet horrifying. The sight held them captive and horrified at once, and they could almost hear it whispering to them, drawing them closer to the edge of the watery expanse. Stay together. Do not look back. A voice boomed above the chaos. It was a leader, someone brave who'd stepped forward to rally the lost. Forward. Trust in the path. Trust in him. That mention of faith seemed to cut through the frenzied cloud of despair, casting a fragile thread of hope. Before they could gather that courage, the waters surged higher, turning dark and ominous as a furious wind howled across the path. The leader raised a hand, signaling for them to push ahead. They resumed their march down the narrow corridor, heartbeats sinking to the rhythm of survival. The space felt smaller, the water pressing in as if testing their resolve. Cries of both fear and hope erupted in tandem, their footsteps becoming increasingly thunderous, but then, the panic boiled again. A figure stumbled in front, a child, lost and alone, teetering at the brink of the parted waters. One gasp echoed through the crowd, a momentary freeze before hearts collectively felt the weight of this tiny soul. Mothers screamed for their children, and fathers shouted for their families, their voices blending into a deafening chorus of loss and longing. "Get the child!" someone yelled, pushing to the front. But that single act of bravery sparked a wave of chaos. People surged forward in a frenzy, struggling to help while others tried to shield their own. The path became a battlefield of sorts, propelling them closer to danger. The temperature seemed to drop as the high walls of water now loomed ominously like titans ready to crash down. Every instinct screamed to turn back, yet they pressed on. Could they escape this nightmare? As the child hung dangerously close to the edge, the fear that coursed through the crowd thickened, threatening to engulf them all, and at that very moment, an eerie laughter rippled through the air, a sound devoid of joy, filled with malice. It twisted through the tumult, raising goosebumps and chilling bones. What was watching them? As the child was reached with trembling hands, the water suddenly surged, higher and higher. They were left teetering on the edge of survival and despair. The path grew narrower, the walls towering overhead, casting a shadow of dread. With each pulse of the sea, time felt more and more fleeting. Would they make it to the other side? Or would the waters reclaim their offering, dragging them under? The crowd pressed on, with hearts racing and the darkness looming ever closer. What had they unleashed by crossing this threshold? And what secrets would the night reveal before dawn broke? Every heartbeat drummed a hammer of desperation in the chests of those who pressed forward. The flickering tendrils emerged like serpents from sinuous depths, threatening to wrap around their ankles. Faces twisted in horror as they gazed back at the child, who still teetered on the brink. It happened in a blink. A resounding crash echoed through the air, drowning out their cries. The water, once a simple barrier, surged upwards, shifting from a menacing silver to an eerie, dark blue. Cold droplets splashed against faces, sending shivers spiraling through skin. A deep, rumbling growl emanated from the depths, vibrating through their very bones, and the crowd froze, a single pulse of terror engulfing them all. "Run! Run!" someone shouted, snapping them from their daze. But the panic surged like a tide, feet tangled together, bodies slammed into one another. In that moment of chaos, the daring risks turned deadly. The child was flung back, arms flailing, terrified eyes wide as she slipped closer to the treacherous edge. "Hold on to her!" Desperate voices cried, but the words tore like nails through the air, powerless against the crashing waves. The leader stood firm, wildly gesturing to rally the group still thick with fear. "To the other side. We have to move now. Trust in him." But trust wavered as the water rose, glowing again, this time tinged with a frightening energy. A flash in the depths caught the eye of one woman. Was it a face? Was it watching them? She blinked, and it was gone, replaced by the howling eyes of her fellow travelers, all haunted, lost in a trance of panic. Then another scream split the air. It was distinct enough to be identified. The mother. The woman whose child had been lost in this turmoil. "My baby! Someone save her!" Her wails pierced the moment, morphing despair into an urgency that ripped through the throng like a wild wind. Instinctively, arms reached out, grappling to save the innocent. But the child slipped, teetering once more, filling the mother's words with choking despair. With a desperate lunge, a man grabbed the girl just as the water trembled, a massive wave swelling around them. A deafening roar echoed, and without warning, the wall of water unfurled like a monstrous curtain, breaking free from whatever was restraining its wrath. It came crashing down, but not with the ruthlessness they had anticipated. Instead, it was held back, an unseen force tethering it just a heartbeat longer. What is this? A woman gasped, staring wide-eyed at the spectacle. Fingers clutched tightly at a makeshift handhold, a rocky protrusion, but trembling fingers begged for freedom instead, and in that instant, as breaths hitched in unison and terror bowed their heads in submission, another voice emerged, a low, menacing whisper, threading through the dark waters. "You are mine." The crowd shuddered as dread flooded through. Whispers unfurled like dark clouds. Confusion gripped them, but there was something deeper, a brush with knowing dawning on them. An ancient fear rekindled, pulsing through the air, the very essence of nightmares. Suddenly, the waters parted again, like a monstrous maw slowly revealing itself. Just as quickly, a single luminous orb broke free, a pulsing heartbeat, almost like a beacon. It floated above their heads, lighting the way, yet darkening hearts. Was this salvation or doom? Someone whispered, voice tinged with certainty and fear. The orb pulsed, radiant and hypnotic. Compelled by its glow, more than one soul stepped forward. Time twisted, and the crowd became a mass of shadows drifting towards it like moths to a flame. Just as the orb began casting its influence further, the leader screamed. "Don't! Stay anchored. Don't let it pull you in." But urgency turned to chaos again as two bodies rushed ahead, lured by the strange light. Would they meet salvation, or was it only a trap? Each step felt heavy, as dread merged with inevitable curiosity. The taste of fear lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. What lay beneath? And what would they find if they dared venture forth? As they treaded closer, the walls of water trembled with ominous anticipation, but what awaited them on the other side? The truth was about to unfold, and it bore the weight of 1,000 nightmares. The crowd stumbled, confusion swirling around them like the encroaching waters. Each individual currently existed in a fragile bubble of horror and desperation. They could feel the orb's tug, a deep, magnetic pull that beckoned them to abandon reason. Faces turned, eyes locked on the blinding light, yet panic turned hearts cold. Time itself felt like an old wound, each heartbeat stretching painfully. "No. We can't let it take us." The leader bellowed, his tone filled with a mixture of authority and fear. But the pull of the orb was captivating, and several stepped forward, teeth gritted, jaws set, lost in its radiance. "What are you doing? Don't go!" shouted a man as he clawed at the ground. But his pleas were drowned out by more screams, voices drawing closer to the orb, as if they were under a spell. The water erupted as a shadow writhed beneath the surface, sending waves crashing high. The beacon pulsed in response, its light intensifying, feeding off the chaos around it. Some turned, wrestling with the instinct to run, and the others, trembling at the edge of a precipice, faced the darkness below. A woman next to the father held her breath. "What if it's guiding us? What if we can escape?" She pressed, her eyes gleaming with fearful hope, but the leader shook his head fiercely, desperate to anchor their group. In that tense moment, discontent began to breed. "Do you trust him?" someone dared to ask. The question hung heavy in the air, dangling like a lifeline thrown into the shrieking void. An ethereal laugh echoed, wrapping itself around their fears. "Trust, it's a fickle thing, is it not?" The voice from the depths rose again, an unseen presence mocking their doubts. A flicker of acknowledgement sparked in many. Here they were, facing not just an escape but a defining decision about their faith, their survival, a crossroads bound in shadow. "Make your choice. You will either be consumed or you will be free." The voice declared, deep and ancient, reverberating through their bones. Suddenly, a figure broke free from the crowd. It was the mother of the child, eyes wild and filled with rage. "You don't get to take her. Not now, not ever." With a fierce cry, she charged toward the orb, her soul ablaze with purpose. The group faltered, fear-tinged respect replacing the chaos momentarily. She reached the edge, hands outstretched, eyes fixated on the small body suspended in the throes of peril. It was as if she could see past the darkness into a truth that lay just beyond the veil. Stop! She'll be lost. The leader screamed, yet there was something captivating about the mother's determination. Her scream pierced the air, filling them with a collective urgency. As she reached for the glow, the water surged higher, forming grotesque shapes around her. Dark figures rose, toothy and glimmering, a sea of nightmares crested before closing in. Time stalled, the heartbeat of the world pounding louder than any fear. The orb, responding to her defiance, began to dim. Was it a sign of struggle or surrender? Would this act of bravery lead to salvation, or was it merely an invitation to the maw of despair? Just then, an echoing roar split the air. The water crashed over the group, the barrier between life and whatever haunted the depths beginning to falter. Run! Someone yelled. But where? The path was lit by a fading light, and shadows danced along the rim of reality. Eyes widened as the dark figures moved faster, the glow of the orb dimming almost imperceptibly but with unmistakable finality. Those who lingered found themselves more lost than ever, hearts pounding in unison with the chaos. What awaited them at the heart of the storm? Hope or dread? Escape or entrapment? The next few moments would decide their fates, and no one could predict the heart-stopping revelations ready to surface beneath the fearsome waters. What truth would be unveiled, and who would have the strength to confront it? The air felt electric, crackling with tension as the crowd shifted restlessly. Some could barely hear the words of the leader over the pounding in their ears. We must stay together. Hold on to one another. But his voice sounded small against the roar of uncertainty. The mother stood defiant, her silhouette illuminated by the fading light of the orb. She was a beacon of raw, unyielding love. I won't let her go. I won't. Her voice trembled but bore an unwavering strength. The water, thick with madness, surged around her ankles. The creatures within it twisted and hissed, their snarls nearly drowned by the chaos above. The crowd's screams mingled with the roar of crashing waves, a symphony of horror that threatened to swallow them all. As she reached for the orb, the light pulsed once more. Blinding brightness erupted, cutting through the dark, and for a fleeting moment, the world fell silent. The mother felt it ignite something deep within, the hope of a rescue, a promise of reunion. But what else stirred in that glow? It was intoxicating. A voice, soft and enticing, curled through the air, wrapping around her heart. You can have her back. Just give yourself to me. No. She screamed, the word bursting forth like shrapnel. The orb flickered violently, as if in response to her refusal. Yet the pull was relentless, a magnetic grip tugging at her very essence. To her right, the leader fought his own battle, eyes wide with disbelief. It's a trick. Don't listen. He shouted, as he struggled against the growing tide of despair. But a few began to edge forward, drawn by the orb's allure, as if searching for truth within its radiant depths. Where are you going? He yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. The frantic rustle of footsteps echoed in the chaos, mixing with splashes of water, and then, in a moment of madness, the unthinkable happened. A child small and vulnerable broke free from a parent's grasp, darting towards the orb, enchanted by its shine. Gasps rose all around as the crowd realized what was happening. Get back. No. The father lunged, arms outstretched, but the child was faster. Headlong into the light, feet barely touching the ground. The orb shimmered violently, and for an instant, time froze. The leader's heart raced, panic surging through him like fuel on flame. No, he bellowed. Someone stop them. But his fear was soon eclipsed by a collective astonishment. The moment hung unsteady, poised between security and ruin. Would the child be consumed by the light, or would the orb reveal some hidden path to salvation? As the last of the light flickered, the dark figures surged like hungry wolves, their shapes amorphous and swirling. The water rose higher, engulfing everything in sight as dread settled deep within every soul present, and then, just as uncertainty stretched its cold fingers around them, a voice thundered from the depths, shaking the very ground they stood upon. You seek freedom, but which shackles will you choose to break? An earthquake of revelation, each mind buzzing like a raw exposed nerve. In that moment, it felt as if the entire world had shifted, towers crumbling. Who were they, really? What bonds did they carry? The leaders grasped their heads in confusion while soldiers moved forward, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Shadows loomed closer, and the orb flickered faintly like a dying star. Fear gnawed at the edges of their sanity, an ever-present question that remained unanswered: what awaited them beyond the light? Detonation of a decision loomed overhead, that abyss of tumult. Another desperate cry rang out, one that carried raw agony. Who would respond? Who would be brave enough to face the truth lurking beneath the shivering waters? The orb pulsed again, and for the first time, its message crystallized into clarity: no more running. Will you stay and fight? With hearts racing and minds spinning, they stood at the brink of a decision that could change everything. As darkness wrapped around them, a ripple of fear transformed into a collective determination, but below the surface, the darkness whispered still. What awaited beneath wasn't just a battle for survival, but a revelation meant to shake their very core. The ground shook once more, an ominous warning rumbling through the very core of their beings. The orb's light danced in waves, a mockery of hope. Shadows clawed at the edges of perception, menacing figures swirling beneath the surface, tempting them to take a step back into the familiar. But one thing was clear: staying still would soon become a more dangerous choice. The mother, eyes wild with desperation, clutched her heart as she fought the urge to run towards the light. We have to go. We can't let fear take us. She cried out, forcing the words through a throat thick with terror. But the crowd wavered. Was it fear or the lure of something greater that kept them anchored in place? It's a trap. Don't let it seduce you. The leader's voice cracked, and weary eyes searched the darkness for answers. The urgency of the moment pounded like a drum, ringing in their ears, louder than the monstrous cries charging from the depths. Suddenly, the child, still illuminated by the faint glow of the orb, began to tremble. Something flickered across their innocent face. Was it confusion or understanding? Mommy? The little voice called, wavering through the tempest, fragile yet powerful. Her heart ached. In one swift movement, the mother took a step forward, propelled by a force greater than fear. Just hold on. I'm coming. But hesitation gripped the leader. What if his instincts were right? Wait. What if we're walking into a slaughterhouse? He shouted, but the mother couldn't stop now. Her entire being thrummed with love, pulling her towards her child who needed her more than ever. And then it hit her: the orb wasn't just a beacon or a trap, it was a mirror, reflecting their deepest emptiness. They weren't just fighting darkness, they were confronting the stark truths of their own lives, each flicker of light shining on guilt, regrets, and fears. An uproar erupted from behind her. It's calling to us. How can we resist? Voices cried, lost in the swell of temptation. People clamored, torn between their instincts and the primal call to dive into the unknown. Don't listen. The leader howled, wrestling against a rising tide of bodies ushering toward the light. Yet even he couldn't resist glancing at the shimmering glow, curiosity gnawing at him as the shadowy figures began to materialize, the dark forms swirling, whispers echoing, promising salvation wrapped in dark intentions. The ground trembled violently, and in that chaos, he caught a glimpse: shapes emerging from the water, rising like vengeful spirits, and with them came a tide of realization. They were manifestations of all the fears this group had avoided. Who will you become on the other side of this choice? The voice boomed again, reverberating in his bones. Will you be who you are now, or will you shed the weight of fear? A gasp rippled through the crowd as the question settled. Faces turned towards one another. Faces filled with uncertainty. But a fire ignited in the mother's heart, determination gleaming in her eyes like steel. We choose our own truth. We will not be defined by fear. Her words sliced through the thick air, reaching those who had nearly surrendered to the allure of darkness. She charged forward, water splashing, chest heaving with determination, pushing back against the tide of despair. One by one, heads began to lift, hearts igniting like kindling caught in a fierce blaze. And then it exploded, chaos reigned as the orb pulsed wildly, illuminating the dark forms that slashed through the waves. The leader lunged forward, grasping the Mother's hand, both battling the surge together. "Come on! We can break through this!" he shouted, contrasting the shrieking chaos. But as they plunged deeper, the ground quaked and a new sound rumbled, echoing like thunder overhead. Something was waking. Something ancient and powerful. "Can you feel it?" The mother yelled, adrenaline surging through her veins. The leader nodded, eyes wide with realization. "The truth won't come easy, but we have to confront it." And then, as if summoned, a monstrous roar erupted from below, shaking everything they knew. It carried a promise, powerful and laden with dread. An awakening was upon them, but would they welcome the truth or would it consume them whole? In that moment, one question lingered in the air, charged with an electrifying life of its own: would they unite or fall apart before the coming storm? The roar echoed like thunder in a storm, fierce and consuming. It rattled bones and shook resolve, filling the air with an ominous charge. The mother felt the weight of it, pressing down like an invisible hand, squeezing her heart. Could they truly rise above the chaos, or were they destined to be snuffed out like candles in a hurricane? All around, people faltered, their faces pale as fear crawled into their minds. Shadows writhed and twisted, threatening to swallow them whole. The orb pulsed violently, its light flickering erratically like a heart on the verge of stopping. But within that light, there was something else, a shimmer of unyielding defiance against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. The leader, still gripping the Mother's hand, scanned the crowd. There was a flicker of hope among the terrified expressions. "We cannot let them fall back," he shouted, his voice ringing with urgency. "We have to push through together." The mother, fueled by an instinct deeper than logic, turned and faced the faces behind her. "Together," she cried, her voice strong. She lifted their hands in a sweeping gesture, hoping to ignite a flame of unity among the despair. "We are stronger than our fears. We choose to fight." A ripple of response surged through the crowd. Some began to chant, their voices merging into a collective roar that soared into the air and clashed with the dark presence looming before them. The shadows hesitated, cold claws retracting ever so slightly, but the orb was furious. It shone brightly, blinding their senses, casting long shadows that seemed alive. It demanded something from them, a sacrifice, perhaps. Would they have to face their darkest memories, the horrors that lay buried beneath their skin, to reach the light? "Now," the leader declared. With a fierce tug, he pulled the mother forward, and together they sprinted toward the orb. Each step was shaky, as if the ground itself tried to pull them back into the despair that had haunted them for so long. As they moved, forms began to materialize from the depths of the chaotic waves. Each one was a fear made flesh, whispering doubts in haunted voices. "You will never succeed," they hissed. "You are alone. You have failed." The memories rushed through them, lost moments, regrets, every time they felt small or unworthy. Each fear swirled like smoke, wrapping around their limbs and weighing them down. "No." The Mother's voice sliced through the cacophony. "This is our moment. We decide our destiny." But just as the words left her mouth, the largest shadow advanced, a towering figure, its eyes burning with malice. It held the weight of every past failure, every doubt, and it laughed, the sound like shattering glass. "You think you can escape me? I am your past, and I will haunt you forever." Cold dread swept through the mother as she wrestled with the temptation to succumb to despair. But then she felt it, the warmth of the child's hand still held firmly in her other grip. With a surge of love, she shouted, "I choose to face you, but I will not face this alone." Suddenly, the crowd surged. Her words ignited them, and hands reached out as more voices joined the chant, swelling into a crescendo that reverberated against the shadow's malice. They were standing as one, drawing strength from each other in defiance of their fears. Together. The leader bellowed, surging forward, leading the charge. But the shadows pressed back, a tidal wave of darkness crashing against their light. The ground heaved beneath them, and panic sparked anew as the shadows twisted, becoming a tempest of terror. Then, a crack formed in the darkness, a fissure that glimmered silver. A light brighter than the orb's glow pierced through, beckoning to them. Hope surged like wildfire, igniting courage even in the tightest hearts. That's it. We are more than our pasts. The mother shouted, her spirit soaring. We are a force. But just as they began to push through, a chilling cold swept through, slamming against them. The leader stumbled, looking back at the dark figure that loomed. We need to go now. He urged, desperation lacing his voice. And yet, the shadows coiled tighter, shifting with deliberate intent, the monstrous laughter growing louder, like an impending storm ready to break. The orb flickered, and with each pulse, it felt as if a clock was ticking down to a finality none could escape. In that heartbeat of connection, did they finally understand the cost of freedom? Did they have it in them to break the chains of their own making? As their resolve wavered under the weight of doubt, one question hung heavy in the air: could they harness the strength of togetherness, or would they slip back into the suffocating embrace of their fears? The ground trembled beneath their feet as the shadows pressed in, layers of darkness tightening like a vice. The chilling laughter echoed all around, a sinister chorus that wrapped itself around their hearts, tugging at every thread of hope. Yet among the rising tide of despair, a spark flickered within the mother, determination sparking in her chest, feeding off the fear that clawed at her mind. Don't let go. She screamed, feeling the warmth of her child's hand pulse with every beat of her own heart. The leader turned back to them, his face set in fierce resolve. We push through. We are the light that will break the darkness. With those words, the group surged forward, each person driven by the thought of what lay beyond the torment of their shadows. But those inner demons were relentless. They gnawed at the edges of their courage, each step forward met with howls of mockery. Leave while you can. You'll never win. The shadows breathed their doubts and insecurities, the sound filling the air thickly like smoke. Tighter, together. The leader encouraged, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. The mother pressed onward, clutching her child close as she navigated through the thick fog of despair that threatened to overtake them. Around her, she saw faces lit with fear but also with a flicker of defiance, the collective spirit growing stronger with every heartbeat. We are not alone. She shouted, her voice ringing out above the adversarial voices. Feel the power of our unity. In that breath of courage, something began to shift. A ripple of collective energy surged through the crowd. They began to roar again, their voices intertwining with fervor. The sound became an anthem, a sweeping tide against the dark. It filled the air, pushing against the suffocating despair, not just a cry of survival, but a battle cry of transformation. Then the orb pulsed violently, casting a blinding light that danced around them like electric sparks. The shadows recoiled for a moment, the laughter faltering as if shocked into silence by their fury. They felt it, the warmth of each other's strength coursing through their veins. But suddenly, the ground cracked underfoot, an angry split that sent shards flying into the air. The orb flickered dangerously, its light sputtering like a candle on the verge of blowing out. Stay grounded. The leader shouted, anchoring his voice in the chaos. It was a reminder, a rallying call, but it felt as if the orb longed for some hidden truth buried within their hearts. Reveal it. The mother cried, desperation clinging to her voice. Let us face what we fear. As those words charged through the crowd, the aura shifted. With each pulse of the orb, a new whisper rose, not mocking, but deep, resonant, an echo of memories long buried. Faces of the loved and lost glimmered briefly in the light, a line of souls waiting for acknowledgement. Remember us. They seemed to say. We are part of your fire. Do not forget. The shadows squirmed and twisted, sensing their hold was weakening. The laughter was replaced by a strange murmur, deep, almost resonating. You cannot fight what is inside. But the mother stood tall, her heart racing in her chest, adrenaline rippling through her limbs. Then we will embrace it. As the crowd responded with a deafening roar, a crack shook the air, splintering the realm between light and darkness. This moment felt pivotal, the air heavy with electricity and potential. But just then, a blinding flash erupted from the orb, casting everyone into the moment where time seemed to stop. The incandescent light swallowed them whole, uprooting their surroundings. In that instant of suspended reality, a haunting question echoed in the void: what truths lay hidden within their shadows, and could they face the storm that awaited them? As the spectral light engulfed their very beings, did they truly understand the horrifying realities they would soon confront? The darkness twisted around them, heavy and pulsing, as the blinding light from the orb finally subsided. The ground beneath the mother and her child felt unfamiliar, as though they had crossed into another realm. She blinked against the sudden shift and squinted, trying to make sense of the swirling shadows that settled around them. Was it real? Was she dreaming? Where are we? She whispered, panic bubbling into her voice. Mom, I'm scared, the child answered, clinging tighter to her leg. Before she could reassure her, the air began to hum with whispers. They weren't mocking anymore, they were urgent, clatters of desperation and pain that cut through the uncertainty like a blade. The leader's voice rang out amidst the clamor, desperate yet unwavering: we must remember. Embrace what we lost, what we fear. The mother's chest tightened. Memories flooded her mind, moments of laughter, warmth, family gatherings. Faces that should have been in this moment, yet they were absent, lost to her through sadness, regret, anger. Each thought felt like a wound reopening. Look! Someone shouted to her right. Blinking back tears, she turned to see a glowing figure emerging from the shadows. It shifted, morphed, taking on the shape of the very people they had all lost: parents, friends, mentors. An echo of voices surrounded them, each one a painful reminder but laced with an eerie beauty. Do not forsake us. We are here with you, they seemed to sigh, an echo of comfort and sorrow intertwining. Why did you leave? The mother screamed out in agony, a cry that pierced the veil of the moment. Why didn't I save you? Just then, the orb flickered again, this time a vivid crimson hue painting the landscape. The shadows roared, a chorus of anguish flooding toward her, but then they, too, were replaced by a chorus of light as the apparitions swept closer, their translucent arms reaching for her. Embrace the truth, they urged, their voices blending into one soft echo. All around her, the crowd hesitated. What was this truth? What did they need to accept? The shadows writhed, seeking to reclaim their grasp on their hearts. The mother could feel it, a pull at her soul as her fears ripped open deep scars. Fight it together! Shouted the leader, bravely stepping forward. Channel the memories. Make them our strength. The collective courage began to build, but with it came fear, the fear of what their truths might reveal. The shadows escalated their assault, striking at the doubts, the regrets, heart-wrenching insecurities that spiraled back into their minds. You were never enough. You will lose again. Let it go. The mother yelled, rising above the chaos, tears streaking down her face. She could feel the warmth of her child clinging tightly to her. Let it out. Embrace it. In that moment, the orb burst in beams of azure and gold, refracting like shattered glass. The echoes harmonized, forming a symphony of acceptance. It was overwhelming sorrow and love, loss and redemption, each wave crashing over them like a tide. For a fleeting moment, she saw clear. The shadows began to break apart as rays of light seeped in, intertwining as familiarity swept over her. But then, a chilling realization struck: the shadows weren't just within them. They were around them too, a sinister force gathering strength. The truth is only the beginning. The voice was chilling, reverberating through their very beings. The ground shook again, harder, as the swirl of darkness pressed in under the weight of her revelation. The orb began to pulse erratically, changing colors with a life of its own, the intensity rising to a crescendo. Who will take the plunge? The leader's voice cut through the chaos. Who will reveal their truths? Before she could understand, something dark surged behind her. It was enormous, a whirlpool of shadows spiraling with eyes flashing in the darkness. They seemed to be watching, waiting. The mother could feel the icy grip of dread settling in her gut. This was only the beginning. Would they have the strength to face not just what was inside but what waited beyond that? Darkness. The shadows writhed, slithering forward. With anticipation and despair entwined, she held her breath as the inevitable confrontation loomed. Would they cave, or could they unravel the depths of their fears in time? In the heart of chaos, the next step awaited them. The moment hung in the air, taut with electric tension as the swirling shadows loomed menacingly. The ground quivered beneath their feet, a deep growl emerging from the dark whirlpool that pulsated, whispering promises and threats alike. The mother held on to her child, their fingers tightly interlaced, warmth battling the biting chill of despair and doubt. Together, the leader cried, his voice cutting through the dread like a beacon. We face this as one. His fervor igniting a spark, the crowd began to form a wall of unity. Eyes wide and hearts pounding, they steadied themselves, stepping closer together, refusing to let the shadows tear them apart. Then it happened. The shadow engulfed them, thick and suffocating. Eyes widening, the mother gasped, feeling it swirling around her, a whirlwind of past failures ripping open old wounds. Ghostly figures reached out, taunting her with memories of despair, lost loves, opportunities abandoned, promises broken. You were never good enough. They hissed, sending tremors of fear coursing through her. No. She shouted, her voice a powerful defiance. I am more than my mistakes. Daring to confront the pain, she remembered her child, their innocent faith sparking her resolve. You are my strength. She felt a wave of warmth flutter within her, pushing back against the cold darkness. The leader echoed her strength. We are powerful in our scars. They remind us we survived. Slowly, the crowd began to chant, voices rising in a chorus, each note a declaration of resilience, each word a bridge back to hope. The shadows hesitated, flickering as if uncertain against the swell of unity. With renewed determination, the leader stepped forward, breaking the barrier of fear with unwavering conviction. Face your truths. He demanded. Shed the burdens, and gather their power. A shimmer of light broke through the dark edges, illuminating their surroundings, casting away the shadows that threatened to engulf them. The mother glanced at her child, who beamed with pure innocence, eyes reflecting trust. The orb flickered now, casting sparks of colors upon the figures in the shadowy whirlpool. We will not turn back. Not now, not ever. She shouted, her voice blooming with strength. Suddenly, the swirling shadows recoiled, the figures writhing as the light intensified. Glistening hands reached from the depths, attempting to grip their ankles, but instead of fear, a collective roar arose from the crowd, shaking the darkness. Together. They proclaimed once again. With fierce unity, they charged forward not just as individuals, but as a family, bonded by shared fears and shared triumphs. Embrace what you fear. The mother cried. Take it in, and let the light shine from within. Each gallant step penetrated the vortex, banishing past doubts with every act of bravery. Their united chant swirled around them, bolstering their spirits, shaking the shadows, forcing the figures to crash back into the abyss. The waters rippled and surged violently in response, curling around the edges of their united front, but the light grew brighter. The orb pulsed, shimmering with an iridescent glow that illuminated their path. Only moments ago, it felt like doom, but now it felt alive with hope. And then, as if summoned by their combined strength, a blinding burst exploded forth from the orb. Shadows began to splinter, revealing a path that peeled back the layers of darkness. The figures within the whirlpool screeched, their cries morphing into whispers, begging for power that was slipping away. With hearts pounding and breaths shallow, the crowd surged ahead, their collective resolve breaking through. The mother felt a weight lift, pain from the past dissipated like fog before the sun. They were rising towards something profound, something infinite. As they crossed the threshold, the sea surged behind them, the shadows retreating against the gentle pull of light. And then it happened. A wave of overwhelming warmth flooded over them, washing away all remnants of fear. Love surged in their hearts, binding them together, and suddenly they were free. In that moment, they stood in a bright expanse, no longer burdened by their fears but uplifted by a newfound understanding. The shadowy figures were gone, and a gentle breeze whispered promises of a new beginning. The mother hugged her child close, tears glistening but no longer steeped in sadness. She had reclaimed her heart, filled it with everything she had chosen to embrace. The leader raised his hands in victory, a new dawn breaking upon them. Together, we are whole. He exulted, and the crowd roared their agreement. Each soul present, no longer defined by the darkness of their past, stepped forward into the light, transformed. As they embraced this new horizon, something profound dawned within them. They had conquered their fears, united in purpose, and in doing so, they had become something extraordinary, an unwavering family, a powerful light against any shadow yet to come, and that was their true journey. Before we wrap up this powerful story, I need to say, you need to subscribe now to catch all the epic tales coming your way. Smash that like button now, it really helps out the algorithm and fuels us to bring you more. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts and theories. Let's get talking about this sensational ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. What a journey we've all been on together. Your support means everything to us, and you, true fans, are the reason we keep creating.